We need to talk, came out of the blue one Sunday evening as we were getting ready for bed. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. Jeanette, my wife of 4 years, had been acting strangely all weekend. I asked her a few times if she wasn't feeling well. No, I feel fine. I just have a lot on my mind. To be honest, I did too. The Great Recession had hit both of our careers hard, and we went from having enough money to fulfill our dreams to barely scraping by. Not that any of our colleagues were faring any better. However, Jeanette was having a tough time accepting our financial setback. She grew up without much and had grown accustomed to the luxuries we enjoyed, like our annual vacation. She never directly blamed me, but I could sense it in the remarks she made whenever we discussed our finances. I hugged Jeanette tightly and expressed my love for her, but she didn't respond in kind. Instead, she did something unusual. She poured herself a strong shot of scotch without offering me any. I instantly sensed that she had something important and troubling to tell me, and she was gathering the courage to start the conversation. After dinner, we sat in front of the TV in silence for the rest of the evening. I couldn't even remember what shows were on. All I could think about was Jeanette. When we went upstairs, instead of our usual routine of watching the news before making love, there was an unusual tension. Our bed life had suffered due to the economic downturn, just like everything else. As I finished brushing my teeth, Jeanette entered the bathroom and dropped a bombshell. Someone at work invited me on an all-expenses-paid ski trip to Colorado. A colleague had to cancel, and the tickets are non-refundable. We're leaving Wednesday morning and returning Monday. I rinsed my mouth and responded, "Someone at work? That's an interesting way to put it. Sounds like it was a man who asked you." Jeanette looked incredibly guilty. "You've answered my question. So who's the guy from work who invited you, a married woman, on vacation?" I tried to keep my composure. "You don't know him," she replied. "But I thought I knew everyone you worked with," I countered. "I do, but I don't exactly work with him," she clarified. "Now I'm confused. You said someone from work," I pointed out. "No, I said someone at work," she protested. "Okay, enough with the word games. Who's the guy who invited you?" "He's a guy I met in the office cafeteria. His office is on the 5th floor, and we've had lunch together a few times." I tried hard to keep my cool, but my voice filled the room. "How long have you been seeing him?" Jeanette started crying. Between sobs, she said, "I would never cheat on you. How can you say something so hurtful?" "Maybe because you forgot to mention that you've been having lunch with another man," I replied, "and now he's invited you, a married woman, to go skiing in Colorado with him. Plus, we haven't been intimate in almost a month. I think that sums it up." "It's not like that," she insisted. "He's a nice guy, but his girlfriend broke up with him, and he doesn't want to waste the ticket. Everything's already paid for. The hotel, lift tickets, it won't cost me anything." "Isn't that convenient?" I retorted. "Now, what's his name?" "John," she said. "Does John have a last name?" I pressed. "Johnson or Jackson, something like that. You've got me so upset I can't think straight." "So you're willing to fly across the country with a man whose last name you don't even know?" I thundered. "You're either having an affair with him or you're incredibly naive." The argument escalated and I demanded, "Who are these friends sharing the cabin with you?" "They're John's friends," she replied. "There are 2 other couples." "2 other couples? So you're going as his date?" I accused. "No, he just doesn't want to waste the non-refundable ticket," she explained. "Why don't you trust me?" she countered. "Would you trust me if I told you I met a woman in the cafeteria and she invited me on vacation?" "Bull crap," I snapped back. "Remember how jealous you got when I was talking to that woman at the ballpark last summer?" "That was different," she protested. "You were ignoring me." "And you won't be ignoring me when you're in a cabin with John and 4 strangers," I pointed out. Jeanette screamed and stormed out of the room. It was a long, sleepless night. We both tossed and turned until about 2 in the morning when exhaustion finally overtook us. I got up at 6 and brewed a pot of coffee. Jeanette took 1 sip, threw it in the sink, and said, "I'm going to work." I knew then that when my wife dug in her heels, admitting she was wrong was out of the question. She was the most stubborn person I'd ever encountered. As I drove to work, I brainstormed a plan to salvage my marriage. I knew that relying on logic wouldn't cut it. This situation required a more forceful approach, as my grandmother used to say. About a year ago, I took a risk by hiring a street-smart young man who had served time in county jail for robbing a convenience store. He often reminded me that he owed me big time for giving him a chance after his release. "You name it, boss, and I'll do it," he would say. So, I decided to cash in on that favor. "Julio, I need your help," I told him. "Just tell me what you need, and I'll handle it," Julio replied. After explaining my situation to him, I handed him a photo of my wife and the address of her workplace. "She goes to lunch every day at noon in the basement cafeteria. I need you to discreetly snap a photo of this guy John when he's there," I instructed. "Then follow him upstairs and find out where he works. At the end of the day, tail him and get his license plate number," I added. "You got it, boss. And don't worry about my time card. I'll take care of it," Julio assured me. As I waited anxiously, I kept glancing at my watch, convinced that Jeanette was meeting her boyfriend to badmouth me. Despite being buried in work, time seemed to crawl by on that typical Monday. At 1:10, my phone rang. "Boss, it's me. I got the photo," Julio reported. They were talking, but I couldn't hear what they said. Afterward, I followed him into the elevator. He didn't even acknowledge me. When he stepped out, I pretended to look for a room number. He went into Suite 510, a place called Anderson Metallurgy Supplies, LLC. "Great job, Julio, but you're only halfway there," I replied. "No worries, boss. I'll stick to him like glue. Send me the picture," Julio said confidently. After hanging up, I pulled up Google on my computer. I wasn't too hopeful, but I started typing variations of JH and JCK. Unfortunately, I got plenty of name matches, but none matched the photo. I decided to check out Anderson Metallurgy Supplies, LLC, and found out they were a big supplier of powdered metals for the industry. They didn't have any employee names or photos online, so I called their number and asked for John Johnson. "Sorry, there's no one here by that name," they said. "Oops, my mistake. I meant John Jackson," I quickly corrected myself. But they didn't have anyone by that name either. "Are you sure you have the right company?" they asked. "My bad, wrong number. Sorry to bother you," I apologized and hung up. I stared at my computer, trying to figure out how to identify that guy when my phone rang again. "Boss, it's me," Julio said. After the call, I slipped into the men's room for a smoke. Guess who walked in? Jackson Johnson. "Except those aren't his real names," Julio revealed. "Did he see you?" I asked. "Nope. I was in a stall getting ready to light up when he walked in. I overheard someone call him Mr. Jensen," Julio explained. "Turns out his name is Robert Jensen. Seems like a real jerk," he added. Julio then shared that Jensen took a cigarette from him, and I praised him for his spy skills. Unfortunately, I got stuck in a logistics meeting until quitting time, so I couldn't do any more research. Julio called as I was parking in the garage. He said Jensen left the office around 3 and took the subway. I followed him to his place near Logan Square, a basement apartment at 2366 North Kimball Avenue. It was run down with burglar bars but no curtains. I hung out nearby to see if he went anywhere else. About 10 minutes later, he brought out a stack of pizza boxes and tossed them into the garbage cart. Then he came out with 2 large garbage bags. After he went back inside, I grabbed both bags. That's how my buddies steal identities. People throw away too much valuable stuff. "Boss, I don't know who Jackson Johnson is, but I found a bunch of official-looking documents with the name Robert Jensen," Julio reported. "Great job, Julio. Let's discuss this more tomorrow," I replied. "Got it, boss. What I found gave me an idea." I walked in and saw Janine eating a burger and fries at the kitchen table. She hadn't gotten anything for me. Ignoring that, I sat across from her and laid out my demands for a rational discussion. Jeanette tried to interrupt, but I told her to wait until I finished speaking. "I'm not clueless. I remember how you phrased your vacation plans to make me think you were going with a coworker. It's time for full disclosure," I stated firmly. "I need John's last name, address, email, cell number, and workplace. Plus, copies of the plane tickets and the mountain cabin rental address. If something happened to you, I wouldn't know where or with whom you went," I explained. "Don't be so dramatic," she retorted. "Let me finish," I insisted. "I also need the names and numbers of the other couples. Now, you may respond." "He didn't rent the cabin. It belongs to his uncle. And John doesn't have a cell phone," she confessed. "What do you mean? Even 5-year-olds have cell phones nowadays," I remarked. "Well, he doesn't," she replied defensively. "If I gather all this information, will you stop pressuring me and let me enjoy myself?" She brightened up, flashing a smile. "You've got one day to get me everything. Why can't you admit you're jealous because I'm going to Colorado?" I slammed my fist on the table. "I'm not jealous. I'm upset because in all the time we've been together, you never mentioned skiing once. Now suddenly, you want to go skiing in Colorado with some guy you met in the cafeteria, and you wonder why I suspect something fishy. I swear I'm not, she protested. Just get me the info. If it checks out, we'll talk. I was tempted to tell her that her boyfriend used a fake name, but I wanted to see Jensen's reaction first. We slept as far apart as the queen-sized mattress would allow. Surprisingly, Jeanette was civil the next morning, and we even had coffee together. I arrived at the office early, anxiously pacing until Julio showed up. Jeanette was leaving soon, and this was my last chance to salvage our marriage. Julio brought a large cardboard box to work. He had sifted through the bags, separating the real garbage from the important stuff: financial records, bank statements, and legal mail. He tore open the envelopes as if that would deter identity theft. I carefully taped back together any important documents and organized them. The first item he handed me was a legal-sized envelope addressed to Robert Jensen. That guy's getting dragged to court for skipping out on child support. He's got 2 little kids, and he hasn't paid a cent in over a year. The next thing was a bench warrant for missing court over not paying child support. Julio explained, "Cops are too busy to come to your house, so they put your name in the system. If they catch you, even for a small thing like a traffic ticket, you're going to jail." He chuckled at that. "Good plan, boss." Next, there were a bunch of overdraft notices and bounced checks from a bank in San Francisco. He got a bunch before they closed his account. Then came the best part, a printout of the flight reservations. "Strange thing, boss. His ticket's round trip, but your wife's is only one way." "That's not good. With this info, I can cancel their tickets." I had another idea. I'd split up the lovebirds by moving Jensen to the back of the plane and grabbing his seat for myself. After going over everything, I searched the Chicago Tribune archives and found out why Jensen used a fake name. He was a convicted woman offender, originally from Chicago. All 3 daily papers had printed his mugshot after he attacked someone in Denver. They didn't share many details because of a plea deal, but he ended up pleading guilty to a lesser charge and got 2 years behind bars. His wife divorced him while he was locked up. A check of the offender registry confirmed where he lived. It also mentioned he got out early after just 14 months because of prison overcrowding. His first move was to find his ex-wife and beat her so bad she was in the hospital for almost a month. With 2 felony convictions, my wife still thinks he's a nice guy. I took an early lunch break and headed to the courthouse to get a copy of Jensen's divorce papers. It cost 25 cents per page for photocopies. The filing included a copy of his arrest warrant for woman offense. He drugged a young woman while skiing and offended her. I also looked into DIY divorce filings at the law library, finding a good template online and filling it out. I cited adultery as the reason and attached timestamp photos of them chatting in the cafeteria for an hour, like lovers. My last stop was the Domestic Relations Division of the Circuit Court, where I filed for divorce. I got 3 copies stamped with the official seal and a case number. I told my boss I needed a few personal days off, and he didn't ask questions. Jeanette was cooking dinner when I got home, a real meal, not something from a box. I guess she was trying to make me happy. I hugged and kissed her. She replied, "Not as good as I hoped, but better than nothing." She pulled out a folded paper from her purse. "Here, I got you everything you asked for. John Johnson doesn't have a phone, but I found his email, and he's on Facebook. Where does he work?" "He got a promotion but hasn't got his new business cards yet." When she said he couldn't even tell you where he works, I looked at her like she was crazy. I opened my laptop and went straight to Google Maps, entering the chalet's address. Strike 1. Then I tried the official Denver zoning map. Strike 2. I tried every map program I could find, but they all came up empty. "Honey," I called out, "there's a problem." I checked the chalet's address on 6 different mapping programs and the assessor's webpage, and none of them recognize it. "He must have messed up the address somehow," she suggested. "What about the tickets?" "He said we get those at the airport." "No, you get the boarding pass at the airport. You should know that from our trip to Maui." Next, I tried calling the phone numbers he gave for the other 2 couples, but neither worked. Online searches and Facebook didn't yield any results either. "Honey, I hate to say it, but none of the information Johnson, if that's his real name, gave you checks out. There's no way I'm letting you go." I thought she might admit something was off with Johnson, but instead, my dinner flew across the room and hit the wall. "You're not letting me?" she screamed. "Who are you to control where I go? I'm your husband. Why are you being so stubborn? I'm just worried about you going skiing with a guy who's lied about everything. You don't even know where you're going." "He didn't lie. Maybe he doesn't want you causing trouble." "Is he afraid I'll show up and ruin his plans?" Jeanette lost her temper. She was spitting out words as she spoke. "Stop saying that. We'll never be more than friends. I'm going skiing and you can't stop me." "Fine, go skiing. But how are you going to afford it? We're broke, remember? I have those 2 jars full of silver coins I've been saving since I was a teenager. I was saving them for a getaway for our 5th anniversary. I'll cash them in now, and either we'll go on a vacation together or I'll use the money to hire a divorce attorney. It's up to you. Stop threatening me." "I'm not threatening you. I'm making a promise, and you know I always keep my word." "I don't understand why you don't trust me. Johnson hasn't exactly been a gentleman by not backing off when he found out I'm married." "I told you he's only taking me because the ticket is non-refundable. I'll reimburse him for the ticket and still have enough left for us to go skiing. It's too late. We're leaving tomorrow morning and I can't reach him." "Jeanette, I'm not naive. I won't be fooled by you. Any man who would let his wife do what you want to do isn't a real man. Think about how you'll explain to your family and friends why we're getting divorced. Don't give me that. I promised I'd come back relaxed and make it up to you. Please, I'm begging you. It's not too late to save our marriage. I told you, I can't cancel. I promised John I'd go, and it's too late for him to find someone else. So, you'll keep your promise to him at the expense of the vows we made in front of God and our families? I keep telling you, nothing's going to happen. It doesn't matter if nothing happens. You made your choice. You picked him over our marriage." I spent the night on the couch. I heard Jeanette crying in the bedroom. My mind was torn between logic and emotion. The rational side wanted to let her face the consequences and revel in it later, but my heart urged me to be the knight in shining armor and save our marriage. I spent a sleepless night wrestling with my thoughts. Eventually, I decided on a compromise. I woke up before dawn, but Jeanette ignored me. She got angry when I took a picture of her with my phone. "Why did you do that?" she demanded. "So the police have a recent photo in case they need to identify you," I replied. She responded with a string of curses. As she packed her suitcase, I entered the bedroom. "If you board that plane with him, don't expect me to be here when you return. Our marriage will be over," I warned. She shot me a dirty look and retorted, "I know you're not that foolish." "Funny, I thought the same about you. I guess we were both wrong," I replied, before leaving without kissing her goodbye. I parked my car down the block and watched her leave. Then I returned home and shaved off my beard and mustache. Dressed in a black suit with a white shirt and tie, I considered it my funeral attire, symbolizing the death of our marriage. I added sunglasses to complete my disguise, grabbed my briefcase and suitcases packed with clothes, and headed out for one last attempt. I was at the gate when Julio called at 8. He informed me of a big argument between Jeanette and Jensen outside his apartment. Despite her offer to pay for parking, he insisted they take the subway, claiming it was cheaper and they would need the money in Colorado. While she was in the bathroom, I checked her wallet. She had less than $100 in her possession. I hoped she wasn't planning to use our joint credit cards because I had already canceled them after purchasing my ticket. I wished I could read Jeanette's thoughts as she lugged her bags down the stairs to the dimly lit subway, known as the dark underground labyrinth by Chicagoans. The Blue Line train would be crowded with commuters heading to work. Julio thought it odd that a man flying to Denver for skiing in December didn't have a proper winter coat or even gloves, as he observed them getting pushed around by the crowd. Jeanette's dream vacation was already in jeopardy. The journey lasted a little over half an hour. Julio trailed them into the terminal and watched Jensen print out their boarding passes. Luckily, he didn't scrutinize them closely and hadn't noticed that I changed his seat assignment just before purchasing my ticket. Julio called again to inform me they had reached the TSA checkpoint, so we couldn't follow them any further. "Thanks for everything. You've been a huge help," I expressed my gratitude. The screener at the X-ray machine flagged Jeanette's carry-on bag. "Please step over here, ma'am," he instructed. Soon, a TSA worker was rifling through her belongings until he found the corkscrew hidden in the inside zipper pocket. I had planted it there while searching her bags earlier to see what she had packed. To my relief, there was nothing remotely suggestive. The TSA agent admonished her and confiscated the corkscrew. The timing had to be perfect for my plan to succeed. I had paid for early boarding and secured one of the first seats on the plane. I took the center seat, leaving the window seat for my wife. I decided to offer her a second chance if she chose to sit next to me so I could present my evidence. Luck was in my favor as the man with the aisle seat boarded a couple of minutes later. He was a well-built young man, likely a college athlete based on the buzz around him. Gradually, the row ahead of us filled up as stragglers searched for space to stow their carry-on bags in the overhead bins. A few minutes later, the drama unfolded. "Hey, a-hole, you're in my seat," Jensen exclaimed, shoving his ticket in my seatmate's face. Jeanette, busy with her suitcase, turned to the commotion. The guy in the aisle seat pointed out, "Check the row number. You're supposed to be further back by the bathrooms." Jensen launched into a tirade, cursing the airline's incompetence and demanding to sit next to his girlfriend. Jeanette heard him refer to her, but remained silent. Instead, she suggested, "John, since he doesn't want to move, maybe you should ask the man in the middle to switch seats." Without my beard and mustache, Jeanette didn't recognize me immediately, aided by the sunglasses I wore. Meanwhile, a flight attendant had made her way through the crowd, emerging from the aft galley to address the disturbance. She scowled at Jensen and ordered him to take his seat so they could complete the boarding process. "This flight is fully booked. Please take your assigned seat, and we'll see if any changes can be made after takeoff," she insisted. Jensen persisted, waving his ticket. Jeanette finally noticed me in the center seat. "What are you doing on my flight?" she exclaimed angrily. "You orchestrated this to embarrass me," she accused. "I'm not the one humiliating you. He's the one calling you his girlfriend," I retorted. Her voice dripped with venom as she moved to the empty row in front and continued berating me. "You jerk! You've ruined my vacation. I hate you. I hate being married to you," she spat out. I anticipated her anger, but her words felt like a stab to my soul. I was stunned, feeling like I had lost her. Grabbing my briefcase, I was about to leave the plane when something unexpected happened. Jensen aggressively waved his ticket in my face, and on impulse, I snatched it from him. My voice trembling, I demanded, "Whose name is on this ticket?" I showed it to Jeanette. Confused, she replied, "John, who is Robert Jensen?" Jensen snatched the ticket back and crumpled it, claiming there was no name on it. The flight attendant intervened, urging us to take our seats. Jensen persisted, insisting on his seat next to his girlfriend. His disrespectful words about my wife brought me back to reality. Tears welled up as I looked at Jeanette and revealed Jensen's true identity. I handed her a copy of the bench warrant, explaining that Jensen, her supposed boyfriend, had an outstanding warrant for failing to pay child support. He could afford a vacation because he neglected his own children. Opening my briefcase, I passed her the document. "You should take a look at this," I said to Jeanette, handing her the document. Her voice shook as she asked, "John, what's happening? Is that true?" "While you're at it, ask your boyfriend why he didn't buy you a return ticket," I added, giving her their trip itineraries, which showed her ticket was one way. Jeanette grew concerned. "John, why don't I have a return ticket?" Ignoring her, he continued arguing with the flight attendant. Did he forget to mention he spent 2 years in jail for beating his wife so badly she was hospitalized for almost a month? "I have pictures," I told her, handing over a couple of photos showing the woman's injuries. "This nice guy did this to her." Jeanette pleaded with John to confirm it was untrue, but he remained silent, focused on his argument with the flight attendant. "You need to make him move or else," I insisted, then continued, "you'd be amazed what you can find by Googling someone's real name. Here are newspaper stories to prove it," I said, passing her several articles with his mugshot. "Does this sound familiar? He convinced a naive young woman to go skiing in Colorado, where he and his friends drugged and offended her," I exclaimed, causing the plane to go quiet. Jeanette broke into tears. "John, please tell me this isn't true." He was too occupied arguing with the flight attendant and didn't reply. "Try Robert Jensen. That's his actual name," I suggested. Jensen might not have been the sharpest predator, but it seemed to finally register with him. "I'm going to kill you," he yelled and lunged at me, but his punch landed on the flight attendant's face instead when I dodged. Chaos erupted in the narrow aisle. My seatmate, a starting defensive tackle at a Big Ten college, swiftly restrained him until the police handcuffed him. He was hailed as a hero, and the airline upgraded him to first class as a reward. Jensen learned offending a flight crew member is a felony. Despite his excuse that he intended to hit me, not the flight attendant, the police weren't sympathetic. I handed Jeanette all the evidence I had gathered. "I swear every word is true," I assured her. Jeanette stared at the documents without a word. "It's over. Let's go home," I said, hoping for an embrace. But she remained silent, staring at the floor. Then it worsened. As the police escorted Jensen off the plane, he kept shouting, "I had your wife." My eyes begged Jeanette to deny it, but she turned away silently. An airline security guard informed us that we were being handed over to the Chicago Police Department for our involvement in the incident. Before we boarded, I overheard a flight attendant announcing, "Let the gate agent know 3 seats just became available." I silently thanked the heavens. As we walked through the cabin, I felt the stares of the other passengers, their cell phones snapping pictures like crazy. Now Jeanette got a taste of real humiliation. Not a word escaped her lips during that walk. It seemed like she was caught off guard. I, too, was in a daze. My knees felt weak, but I forced myself to keep moving, holding my head high. I wanted everyone to know I did everything I could. The plan worked almost perfectly, except I saved Jeanette, but lost my wife. The police separated us for questioning. Even Homeland Security was involved. I spent an hour recounting everything about Jensen. Then, they left me alone with a cup of stale coffee for 2 hours while they contacted their colleagues in Denver. I paced like a caged animal, debating the fate of my marriage. Did my wife betray me with Jensen, or was he lying to tear us apart? And if she didn't do it, why didn't she defend herself? The questions spun in my head endlessly. When the detective returned, he revealed they found evidence in Colorado. My wife was sickened when she saw the pictures of the run-down shack where Jensen planned to take her, with his 4 friends awaiting their arrival. They had set up the shack with restraints and chains so no one could escape. We found enough sedatives hidden in his bag to knock out an elephant for a week. It didn't take much convincing to get them to spill their plans for their next victim. My wife wouldn't have stood a chance. They planned to finish her off when they were done with her. The detective said my wife went pale as they confessed their intentions. Then she passed out cold. When he finished, the detective suggested I talk to my wife alone. It wasn't really a suggestion, it was more like an order. "Yes, sir," I replied. I unlocked my briefcase and pulled out the divorce papers. "What's that?" the detective asked. I explained that I had told Jeanette I'd divorce her if she got on the plane with Jensen. "Have you no compassion?" he asked. "She's broken." "You're being reckless. She's in shock from realizing how close she came to being killed," he continued. "You said you did all of this to save your marriage. Hand her that and you'll destroy her." I remained unmoved. The part of me that loved her had disappeared. She knows she messed up big time. Right now, you're the good guy. You pulled off an incredible plan to rescue your wife. You're like a hero. You can't abandon her. "I planned to give these to her at their love nest," I admitted. "But considering the circumstances, even after all she's done, if Jeanette apologizes, I'll tear these up today. But I still intend to divorce her. I give you my word. But you can't let her know. You have my promise." A minute later, he brought my wife into the room. I caught a quick glimpse of her before she covered her face with her hands. She looked terrible and smelled of vomit. She sank into the chair and started crying. The detective stood over her and said, "Mrs. Menzel, I've been a cop for over 29 years, and what you did was the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. If anyone ever deserved to be killed, it's you. You should thank God every second for your husband and every heartbeat he gave you. You owe him for the rest of your life." He shut the door behind him as he left. The room fell silent, except for my wife's sobs. Not a single word. No thanks, no apology, nothing. After about 5 minutes, I grew tired of waiting for her to speak. "You sacrificed our marriage for a ski trip that cost less than $1,500. $1,500. That's all our hopes were worth. How can I ever trust you not to leave me for the next shiny thing after this?" Inside, I begged her to say something, but she remained silent. Tears streamed down my face as I waited for her to respond. When I couldn't bear it any longer, I said, "If you had said sorry at any point, I would have torn up this paper. I can't wait any longer. I gave her a copy of the divorce papers. Jeanette screamed so loudly that the detective rushed back in to check on her. I've already packed my stuff. Whatever I left behind, you can donate or toss, I told her, handing over the keys to her apartment, and walked away without looking back. The next time I saw her was in court. The judge ordered us to undergo counseling. I reluctantly went along with it, but I never planned on reconciling with her. During the sessions, the counselor saw how foolish my ex-wife was. As I expected, the counseling didn't work out, and after 7 months, I was officially divorced. I never heard from Jeanette again. Not that I wanted to. Jensen was charged with conspiracy to harm someone and is still serving his sentence. I hope they keep him locked up forever.